Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. I got some tickets to give away to see the Sounds take on Durham this Thursday at First Horizon Park. A 4-pack of tickets for Caller 3, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller 3 will win a 4-pack of tickets to see the Sounds take on Durham this Thursday at First Horizon Park. Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com is with us talking all things Tennessee Titans. So, PK, we know, obviously, this is a huge season for Will Levis coming up. Today's NFL is really intriguing to me in terms of quarterbacks and how quickly teams are making decisions on quarterback. And there's one situation that kind of encapsulates it to me, and that is Kenny Pickett with Pittsburgh. Kenny Pickett was selected in the first round in 2022. He spent 2 seasons with Pittsburgh. And we're talking about Pittsburgh here, the franchise that has had 3 coaches in the last 60 years. Like it's when you talk about patience, when you talk about kind of a methodical process and sticking to what they do, Pittsburgh is at the top of the list when it comes to any pro sport you want to talk about. They drafted him in 2022. He played the first season, 13 games, 12 games last year, and he's out. He's gone. He's gone. He's a backup in Philly right now. So 2 years. And they've moved on from Kenny Pickett. It just feels like teams are making decisions on quarterbacks very quickly nowadays. So with that in the backdrop, how do the Titans go about properly evaluating Will Levis this year, avoiding overreacting maybe on either side of things, either too good, too bad? How do you view what the evaluation of Levis should look like for the Titans this season?
Well, let's hit the Pickett thing for a minute. I think he's very representative of there's a yes, there's a no, and there's a maybe. All right? And Pittsburgh, like you said, a very patient organization, got to a no on Pickett. A combination of wasn't playing well enough, wasn't showing enough promise, and didn't have the attitude. They did not like the way he handled things. The report was he was unwilling to dress as a backup late in the season last year, and then reacted really poorly to the Russell Wilson trade or the other quarterback acquisition, but did not like how they were filling out the quarterback roster, which is just bad form and dumb by him. So you can get yourself in bad graces quickly with attitude stuff on top of poor play.
Yep.
Right? If you could take yourself from a maybe to a no with that extra stuff. If you're a maybe, and Will Levis is a strong maybe for the Titans right now, the best thing a team could do for you is what the Titans are doing, and which has some weird reaction around the country.
It really does.
Right? People around the country are like, why are the Titans doing all of this stuff when they're not that good? Well, first off, you're doing stuff to get good, regardless of who your quarterback is. Why is it bad to invest? Like, what would the reaction have been if they did nothing? Like, they're in a no-win situation in terms of this view around the country. They made moves to try to get good, and everybody's saying, why are they doing this? It's too early. They don't have the quarterback yet. If they did nothing, people would be like, oh, they're tanking to get a quarterback next year, and they're not going to be competitive. But will the decision be as fast? I don't think so, because it's year one with the new coaching staff. So I think, it's probably a 2-year decision, but it's 2 years starting now.
Yep.
So it'd be a 3-year decision for them. Is that a reasonable timetable? It's a lot different than it used to be. But I think it's a fair timetable now. And I think it's certainly a fair timetable for him based on what they've done to get him into an environment where he's got enough surrounding him. There have been times where in the Titans' history where I've said, like, it's too early to get a quarterback because they have so little surrounding him, where coaches and GMs have kind of indicated that, like, well, you bring a quarterback into this situation, he's going to get killed based on what we have up front, or he's got nobody to throw to or everything. They didn't feel like they had enough of a structure for him to come in and have a chance at success. I think we would all agree the Titans, while they have some holes still, couldn't fix everything in one off season. We knew that. So, not ideal at right tackle, not ideal at safety, probably not ideal at tight end. But for the holes that they had, pretty good offseason on paper. And Will Levis should be set up to show how good he can be. And we should have pretty good sense at the end of this season, provided he stays healthy, as to where he really fits in yes, no, maybe. And the range for maybe should be smaller.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the other interesting part about this is the coaching change, because Brian Callahan has been pretty glowing about Will Levis this offseason in terms of the comments that he's made, both at press conferences, podcasts, wherever you want to put it. We've talked about that. But, if things do go poorly and he's not as good as some people hope this year, how patient is Callahan with this? That's going to be interesting, too, does Callahan say, stick with him, let's give him another year? Or does Callahan say, yeah, let me go get my guy in the draft? How can a less than stellar season – stellar's not the right word. How can a below average season from what your expectations are from Will Levis heading into this year affect the way that Callahan views that position? I think is going to be interesting too.
Yeah, well, I think there are a lot of other moving parts too. How's the run game do? How does the defense and special teams help keep them in games? And what does not so great from Levis look like? Is he making huge mistakes that cost you games? Is he throwing interceptions that are returned for touchdowns? Is he making terrible decisions that put you in bad spots? Or is he as a punt on fourth down,
right,
on the next down? I think a lot of us who are optimistic about Will Levis are picturing a lot of successful plays and a lot of explosive plays. Well, if they don't get that, I think people aren't going to like this, but the Vrabel kind of don't lose the game for us quarterbacking, can he at least do that? Right? We want the offense that we saw in Cincinnati with Burrow going and winning games. All right. And maybe he gives you that. Maybe he gives you that some weeks. On the weeks that he does, and I think he will be hot and cold a little bit.
I agree. Yep.
On the weeks that he's cold, does he kill you?
Right.
That to me is the biggest question. And maybe he kills you a couple times, but does he kill you enough that he's the difference in being a playoff contender or not? I also don't feel like Callahan will be the type of guy that if that's what happens, if Levis loses you 5 games, or 4 games, that as they assess him, or when they get to the point that he's not the guy, Callahan's going to say, well, he wasn't my guy. I deserve more time. All of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
When they move on, when they move on, I think that Callahan would say, hey, I thought he was good. We gave him a shake. Now we got to find the next guy and all of that. But I don't think at this stage he allows any of that to enter his head. Nobody over there is thinking about a scenario where it doesn't work.
Well, he's clearly excited. I don't think that's fake. I don't think that he's manufacturing or just trying to hype up Levis. I think there's legitimate excitement from Callahan's standpoint of what he's seen from him to this point. Now, none of it really matters until you get on the field in actual games. But I do think that he has seen some things with him behind the scenes that get him excited about what he can be this year.
And it makes just you talking like that makes me think back to Vrabel coming in with Marcus. Was he excited? Yeah. That is more like, all right, we'll see what we can do with this guy.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure, and probably not.
Yeah. 615-737-1025, our phone number. How should the Titans go about evaluating Will Levis this year? And there's one thing with PK on this front that I want to touch on coming up next as well. We'll do that. 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We got a rant from PK coming up at 7:45. We got to come up with an actual name for PK's rant.
Primary complaint.
There it is. That's what we can do. 615-737-1025, our phone number, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. By the way, PK, quick aside, really enjoyed your Elsewhere podcast that you came out with last week. A different side of PK. I like it.
I appreciate that. I really enjoy doing these. I haven't done it in a long time. It's kind of a essay on something in life, only 20 minutes. So if you're out there and haven't listened to it, maybe you listen to it, and maybe you hate it. But a lot of people have gotten back to me that liked it, so check it out. I'd like to do them, but I think I can only do them when I have something kind of presenting itself to me. If I try to do it weekly, it becomes a force. So listen and send me feedback and see if you like it as much as Robby did. I remember you, before we knew each other particularly well, reaching out to me about them when I did them in the past.
Yep.
So I knew you were a fan, and I was hoping that you listened to this one. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Check it out, Elsewhere by Paul Kuharski. On the Levis front.
It's on the Paul Kuharski podcast, by the way.
There you go.
Not separate.
So on the Levis front, to me, the idea, there's a couple things here. One of them is pretty simple. The other one I think is more complicated. If he's good, maybe he's not great, but he's good, I think it's easy for the Titans to lean more into that and say, all right, well, let's just keep going with it. Keep going with Levis next year. Double down on adding pieces around him while you're not paying hardly anything for the quarterback position, and continue to try to elevate the roster to the point where in his third year, Brian Callahan's second year, you feel like that should be the point where you really, really know that he's your quarterback of the future. So I think if it plays out that way where he's good, maybe not great, but there are signs of life throughout the year that, all right, you might have something here. I think that's an easy decision for the Titans to make to continue to stick with it.
I think there's a very low percentage chance that they're quarterback shopping next year.
I would agree.
And if they're quarterback shopping next year, they're drafting fifth because they've completely bombed this year and lived up to the expectation of all these naysayers. It would be tough for a second year in a row to locally say to the national people, you're right. And I say that, national people, like a lot of national predictors are predicting a really bad record for the Titans. But again, I'd say, Kevin Clark, Pete Prisco, I'm forgetting some names, but very good national people. I don't know that they're picking the Titans to finish great, but they love Will Levis.
Yep.
And they love
Charles Robinson went on a rant a couple weeks ago about Will Levis.
They either love Levis or they love Callahan or both. So they feel like the Titans are on a good direction. So if you look broadly nationally, especially at smart national people who we like, they think the Titans are on a good track. Pete Prisco thinks that Will Levis was easily the best quarterback in last year's class. Loves his moxie, loves the release, loves the arm. So there are positive things to be found out there. I think it's very unlikely that he flat out falls on his face. Because I think it's very likely that he's going to mix in games like Atlanta and Miami. Now, I think he could be too much of an undulating wave where he has some very good games that get you excited and some very bad games like you're where, oh my God, where did that come from? And I think consistency both game to game and over the course of a game are going to be the issues that we're monitoring. Like in a game where you say, how could he make that throw in the first quarter that was so brilliant and then make this dumb boneheaded throw in the fourth quarter? And one thing, and then you say, how could he look like he looked last week and be doing that this week?
That's
but
where
you know
I think
who another guy like that was, and I'm not invoking them in the same sentence, but Steve McNair had that some weeks where you could tell in the first series, oh, he doesn't have it this week.
Yeah. Well, that's where I think it becomes a little bit complicated. Like how much of that do you put up with, for lack of a better term, if you're the Titans? Like one of the scenarios that I've thought about, and this could go a ton of different ways this year, but what happens like if everything around him plays out, maybe not best case scenario, but pretty well. Like the offensive line is a lot better. Ridley's really good. The defense makes improvements, and Sweat hits. Like there's a lot that if they hit for the Titans this year could work out pretty well. And you look at it at the end of the year, and his play was kind of holding you back from making the playoffs. Or he was the difference in getting to 9 wins, and you're at 7. Like how do you view that if you're the Titans? How patient do you stay with it in a league which, as we discussed, is no longer very patient?
Yeah. Well, I still think, in your scenario there where he's the difference between 7 wins and 9 wins, there are a lot of different ways that could unfold. But I don't think there's any way it unfolds where you say, oh, we're out.
He would have to be really bad, I think.
Yeah.
He'd have to be
And
bad.
if he's really bad, it's going to be more than 7 to 9 win differential, I think. I don't know that this team's good enough to bail him out of that. I don't know that a Pollard Spears offense where right, for this team to be pretty good, Ridley and Hopkins are going to have to be a big part of while they're good. And they can't be that good unless Levis is
Exactly.
good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's inherent that he's got to do at least a pretty decent baseline for them to be pretty good. I don't know that this could be a super defensive successful team. Is this team holding teams to 13 on a regular basis? I mean, is any team?
I think those days are largely gone. I mean, if you look at the numbers, like defense did make a little bit of a comeback last year. Like even Kansas City, right? Like Kansas City was not a good offensive team for the majority of the season. And then they figured it out toward the end and played well in the playoffs.
Yeah, scoring was down.
Scoring was down last year. So it's not like it's just been this straight up trajectory of offense, but the rules are what they are. And the quarterback play is what it is, where I do think offense, like if you can hold a team to 20, you should give yourself a chance to win in today's NFL. Like that's what it is.
Hold them 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
20, 21, 22, you should be right there. Now, last year, we knew the Titans weren't getting there with that. That wasn't good enough, which put a lot of pressure on the defense, frankly. This year, I would, going in, you have to feel good that they're going to be able to score that. And there's like a countdown clock about scoring 30. It's been a long time since they've scored 30. And, again, I'm trying not to be too optimistic, but if they don't score 30 this year a couple times, based on what they've the resources that they've given the offense and the coach that they've brought in and the philosophy that they have now, I think that would be a big disappointment.
Well, that's another part
now,
of
they
this
could
too.
lose 32-30.
Yeah, but this is also an entertainment business. And if they're going to lose, I'd rather watch them lose 35-31 than 17-13 like we have for the last 3 years.
16-13.
Yeah.
Or there's always a 16.
There is.
So somebody looked at it. I think Zach looked that up. I feel like they score 16 or are involved in games with 16 more than anybody. It turns out not to be true, but it's just because my proximity to all of these 16s makes me feel like they score or give up 16 more than any team in the history of mankind.
The other part of this that is also, when it comes to the evaluation of Levis, when your head coach is a play caller, particularly a first-time play caller, we've seen this the last 2 years. I mean, Todd Downing got killed. Tim Kelly last year took a lot of heat as play caller. In professional sports, you could see it. The offensive play caller and the result of the play is ripe for criticism here. And Brian Callahan's doing this for the first time. So if Levis is really good, Brian Callahan's going to get a lot of credit this year. And if he's bad, there are going to be people that say, well, what about the play call? What's that going to look like?
And I think that Callahan steps into a magical situation here, right? Because Downing was terrible. And Kelly, I think
okay.
Kelly did some good things, but he was really handcuffed
Yep.
in terms of what he had to work with. And, we talked about that 13 for 9 from Henry in that game against Houston, where they honestly felt like their best chance, despite the fact that Henry was averaging under a yard per carry, was to give it to him and think that he was going to break something, when that was absolutely hopeless and futile. They thought still their best chance was to keep giving it to him because he might pop something.
Yep.
I have a strong conviction that Brian Callahan is going to have something else. He's going to have something else to that something else, and he's going to have something else to that something else. We talked about Plan B during the whole Vrabel era. Even LaFleur, even Arthur Smith sometimes. Arthur Smith was pretty good at a Plan B.
Yeah.
But when the Titans' offense was bad, we said time and time again, where's the Plan B? Where's the alternative to what they're good at when it doesn't work? And time again, they could not get to a Plan B. We came in and reasonably said they have no alternative. They have nothing to go to. That is not going to be I'm convinced that's not going to be the case here. If something's not working, guess what? They're going to say, hey, let's go to the next thing. And when that's not working, they're going to say, let's go to the next thing. And they're going to, if that's not working, they're going to draw something up on the sideline and say, hey, this isn't in the playbook for this week, but let's pull out X that we had 3 weeks ago,
yep.
or the thing that we drew, or that we were thinking of in the preseason for down the road. Stuff like that is going to happen more.
That is music to Titans fans' ears. 615-737-1025, our phone number. PK's Rant is coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment, let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
Oh, there's no traffic. The light's green. Come on, go! Do you like sitting in the middle of the road? Do you like moving at 2 miles an hour all day long? Come to England! What's worse than being stuck behind a learner driver? Being stuck behind two of the selfish pricks!
It is that time of the day, time for the Rex Rant being hijacked by Kuharski this morning. You never know what Keezer's going to put together, kind of leading into this. Well done on short notice. PK's rant of the day. PK, the floor is yours. I turn it over to you.
Look, traffic rants are too easy, but this one's specific, all right? I've converted to 30A, all right? We went to Santa Rosa last week. We go every other year with the same 3 families, now to the same house 3 times. And it's a lovely trip. I'm not a huge fan of the Gulf. I've converted to the Gulf. It's nice.
Yeah.
And there were some decent waves the last 2-3 days. I like beaches where I can fight waves. If I want to go to a pool, I can go to a pool. I don't want the natural water to be a pool.
Okay.
But we have some little kids involved. It's fun. It's a great trip. Great relationships that are built every time. Play a lot of games. Go to the beach late at night with chairs, sit around, listen to music, look at the stars. I saw satellites for the first time in my life. Played Recovering the Satellites by Counting Crows. All to set the scene. Going, traffic bad. Coming back, traffic just absolutely horrendous. This is supposed to take 6 hours and 30 minutes. Coming back, it took 8 hours and 30 minutes. Traffic standstills at least 7 times coming back. It's not worth enduring that. You can get to Avon by the Sea, my beach in New Jersey, in 12 hours and 36 minutes, which isn't that much more. You can get to Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, which I know nothing about except that it's at the Atlantic.
Yeah.
And I punched in fastest drive to an Atlantic beach from Nashville in 10 hours and 53 minutes. And it's not going to be a standstill because everybody's going to the exact same place. But also this thing with highway driving, like there was a big accident on the other side. Like you could tell it was bad because there were no cars coming. And somebody in our party that was in front of us texted us what it was. We talk about this time and time again. This obsession with slowing down to see what's going on the other side that costs you a half an hour of travel time. We have to train ourselves to get over this.
Yes.
And this thing where one person touching their brakes is like this butterfly in South America flapping its wings, affecting weather all over the globe. Don't touch your brakes. Take your foot off the gas first and assess if you need to touch your brakes. You have no concept of what touching your brakes on 65 North can do to the entire traffic flow.
Yes.
That turns a 6 hour and 30-minute drive into an 8 hour and 30-minute drive. I had a lovely vacation, but on Saturday I regretted going to the beach because of this drive. It's insane and I think all of Nashville thinks that this. I know all of Nashville thinks that 30A is the greatest place in the world.
Yeah.
You must drive somewhere else and experience another beach to stop the traffic madness and to broaden your horizon. There are other good beaches. I'm sure Atlantic Beach in North Carolina is very nice. You can get there in under 11 hours. It'll be great, and you'll help stop this traffic thing. I swear, there are other nice beaches that are not that far away. You can't all go to 30A at the same exact
10-mile
time.
radius. Yeah.
Now, here's another thing I urge some of you to do, which I'm going to do next time. Go on Friday and stay at some cheap motel, and then sleep in and mosey in on Saturday and go to Shunk Gully or whatever for lunch and roll into your place. Go to the beach a little bit and get to your house at 4. And then leave on Friday. Leave late Friday night and get yourself home without this traffic. We have to reach a social agreement here where we're going to space this thing out in some way. We cannot have 2 hours of traffic. We can't.
There's nothing to me driving that's more frustrating when you're backed up in traffic and you're thinking, okay, I bet there's something bad up here that's ahead. And you finally get there and you look and it's on the other side of the road.
Well,
when there's nothing on your side of the road, it makes me lose my mind.
Even more frustrating than that, when there's nothing.
Yeah.
You get up there and you're like, what was that? We had one where we're getting towards Montgomery where it opens to 3 lanes from 2 lanes. We slowed down to get to more lanes.
It's wild.
And we look at each other and we go, what was that? We just spent 20 minutes to expand into an extra lane. Were people so fascinated by it they had to hit their brakes?
It's just wild to me. But you're right. It feels like this general area, they're entire, like everybody goes on vacation in the same place. It's all 30A. A lot of 30A down there.
I know, but we got what we
Panama
need
City.
is a lottery system for what time you leave.
Yes.
From there and to there. Like everybody can't leave between 7 and 8 on Saturday morning to go or to come back.
615-737-1025, our phone number. PK's rant of the day. Josh from Lebanon says, preach, PK, preach, the man of the people. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Gentry Estes from the Tennessee, and he is live in Omaha, Tennessee, preparing for the winner of Florida State and North Carolina. That game today, Tennessee will play tomorrow. We'll get Gentry's thoughts on Tennessee, their chances to win the College World Series, and more coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. And we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our friend Gentry Estes from the Tennessean, live from Omaha. Gentry, good morning. How we doing?
Hey, good morning. Good to be with you guys.
Good to have you with us.
Hey, we've talked a little bit about the logistics of covering this thing before. Conceivably, 10 days in the middle of nowhere with the team you're covering spaced out pretty well with rest between games, particularly if it's winning. Tell us a little bit about just those logistics. And you've stayed, I think, both right in the middle of Omaha and maybe like an hour out of town. Which route did you go this time?
Okay, yeah, I'm in Lincoln. I prefer that as the way. And actually, PK, it's about 12 days. If you get a team that makes a run all the way to a 3-game championship series, you're looking at 12 days up here. And yeah, it's a while. That's the biggest reason. I have stayed in Omaha before, but yeah, I like staying out in Lincoln. It's a little bit quieter. The rates are a lot better, and you get a nicer place with laundry and things where you can go to the grocery store and settle in. I can't think of too many other things I cover where I'm getting groceries and doing dishes in the room, but that's the case here.
What like how difficult? I don't know about difficult, but you get regular availability with them every day. Like you get to know the team in a different way when you're with them for conceivably 12 days, even though you've covered them well up to the World Series.
Yeah, the big thing with this, and it's the same thing for the NCAA basketball championships, where you get like locker room access after games. You get to go behind the scenes. The NCAA at their championship events does do a pretty good job of giving more access than what we're used to covering colleges. Most of the time it is difficult, really difficult, to really get to know a team when you're bringing out one or two players and putting them in front of all the media for about 5 minutes, and that's it. But this is a lot more of a behind-the-scenes kind of thing. And look, this is a really well-done event. They do a good job with the College World Series in Omaha. I know the it's not always fun to be away from home for 2 weeks and do the whole experience here, but it is one of my favorite events to cover when you're there. I always, Omaha takes a lot of pride in this thing, and they do a good job.
So, Gentry, obviously Tennessee waiting on the winner of Florida State, North Carolina. That will be later today, and then they'll try to punch their ticket to the College World Series final tomorrow. The Florida State game, just an incredible comeback by them. Christian Moore hitting for the cycle in that one. Drew Beam with an outstanding pitching performance against North Carolina. Tennessee, obviously, they're the number one overall seed, so they're expected to make noise. But what's kind of stood out to you, particularly in the Florida State game, Gentry, about just the continued persistence of this team, no matter how much they're down, to never give up with that lineup? They're never out of a game.
Yeah, and I think when you watch that Florida State game, that was kind of the perfect example of how things could go wrong for Tennessee here for a lot of that game. The whole setup of that Friday starter role where it becomes Chris Stamos for barely an inning, and then you go to A.J. Causey, they've just kind of pieced this together all season without a true rotation. So when you do that in the first game, Stamos is pulled after like 3 pitches or something, he barely thrown. Then A.J. Causey comes in and gets hit hard, and they fall way behind. And that if you'd said coming in, if you'd drawn up the worst possible start, it would have been to go that way. But we've known Tennessee's pitching was shaky, but we've also known the hitting is as good as any in the country. And you're sitting there at 9-4, not really thinking they're out of the game, and they weren't until the very end. And we're kind of answering the question here: can great hitting overcome shaky pitching? And it certainly did in that game. But I think it was really important for Tennessee in that second game to get the start they did out of Drew Beam. That was huge for him to pitch as well as he did against a good lineup for North Carolina. And he was able to get deep into that game. The defense got a lot better. It was just much better baseball from Tennessee in that second game, as opposed to the first one where they got a little fortunate in that one.
So obviously, the 2-0 route, and there was a stat that I think somebody put out there the other day. I think it was Ben McKee, that 27 of the last 33 winners have gone the 2-0 route here. So obviously Tennessee's in great position here. How do you view kind of how well positioned they are, both from their standpoint, but also the winner of Florida State, North Carolina, and the fact that, number one, they'd have to beat Tennessee 2 times in a row, but number two, they'd also have to do it while having played 3 days in a row at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, it is obviously a huge advantage. It's not impossible for a team to do it that way. I mean, LSU did it last year, but I feel like if you're Tennessee and you can get through this game tomorrow and just, sneak into that championship series on Saturday with an extra 2 days of rest, and I mean, they're in an ideal scenario right now. And, it's this tournament, few things are ideal. If you're able to get set up like that, I can't envision a better scenario in which Tennessee could go win a national championship. And I think the field in itself, I mean, right now I'd say that the 2 best teams here are the ones that are 2-0. I think Tennessee and Texas A&M. Those were the 2 favorites, by a pretty wide margin coming into this thing, and they played that way. But A&M's pretty banged up, and you just look at these teams, and there's nobody there that should scare Tennessee that much, I think. I think they've got a good shot against anybody in a championship series format. Got to get there first. Florida State, North Carolina, both real good teams. I think Florida State is probably who you don't want to see, because I think their offense is close to Tennessee's, and I think you saw that in the first game, what they can do. But, either way, they're going to face a good team tomorrow, and it's important to get through that and not have to face an elimination game. But if they're able to do it, they're in great shape.
Understand, I'm getting ahead of myself. UT fans probably pissed at the question, but if they win this thing, what does it do for Tony Vitello in terms of status, in terms of his place in the national order of things? And even in the state, with Tim Corbin so respected, and already having that notch on his belt.
Yeah, I think that's for us where we are. What makes this even more interesting is the fact that you have Vanderbilt that's been up here and done well in this tournament up until pretty recently, and what Tennessee has done the last few years has been pretty remarkable, considering where that program had been for a long time baseball-wise. And I still think there is a sense among some of the people who are here every year and deep into the sport that, Tennessee is very much new money when it comes to this. I think if they go win a national championship, and Tony Vitello goes and wins a national championship, I feel like I do think it'll change a lot about how Tennessee is perceived as kind of that up-and-coming, upstart program. They would then be truly one of the elite programs. And I think Tony Vitello would be one of the elite coaches. And I think he's earned that to an extent over the last few years. But what had always kind of held everything back was how they'd performed when it mattered most. Up until this year, he was 1-4 in Omaha. Tennessee, probably his best team was the 22 team that didn't even get to Omaha and blew it in the Super Regional. So there's a certain level of respect in this sport that comes with performing on the biggest stage here. And, I think Vanderbilt certainly did a good job of that over the years. If you look at Tim Corbin's record at the College World Series, he's done pretty well, in a tournament where it's very difficult to do real well. But, this Tennessee team's different. It's funny when everyone looks at them, I think in a lot of ways they still see that 22 team. A columnist friend of mine wrote this, the barbarians at the gate, that kind of thing, for the sport. And this team really isn't like that. I don't think that the 24 team has that same kind of in-your-face mentality that the 22 team did. But a lot of people still look at Tennessee and Tony Vitello and still see it that way.
Well, Gentry, it's been a lot of fun to watch. Looking forward to the game coming up tomorrow. Enjoy the great state of Nebraska, and we'll talk to you soon.
You bet. Take care, guys.
Get that laundry done.
That's right. Get the laundry done. No doubt about it. Gentry Estes from the Tennessean, our guest. You ever been to Lincoln? Ever been to the state of Nebraska?
I have been to Omaha.
Okay.
And, of course, the thing that would take me to Omaha is a Springsteen show.
Of course it is.
So in and out of Omaha, walked around, had a nice lunch, went to a show, got the hell out.
It's generally how
fine.
you should handle Nebraska.
It was fine.
That's good. That's good.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing some things in and around Nebraska, but I wouldn't like to drive there.
No. Probably getting some traffic jams on the way there, too. One or two. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, we'll get PK's thoughts on the Trevor Lawrence contract. That was history-making in its own right. Lots of money for Trevor Lawrence. That's coming up next. Take your thoughts as well, 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Hey, Robby Stanley here. Attention business owners, CEOs, CFOs. You're not going to want to miss this event. NetSuite by Oracle hosting a day-long event on Tuesday, June the 25th at the Conrad Hotel downtown. They're calling it Business Grows Here, and it's set up to help you grow your business. You can spend the day learning from more than 15 speakers on stage, sharing their wisdom and their insights, including Jamie Siminoff, the founder of Ring Video Doorbell, and Burke Nihill, the CEO of the Tennessee Titans. Every speaker you'll hear will leave you with actionable strategies, tips that you can immediately apply to your business, and more. You can take all the notes you want and meet people that you can change the way that look at growing your business today. So you're not going to want to miss this event. Apply to attend the business event of the year, NetSuite's Business Grows Here, happening on Tuesday the 25th. It's free to attend if you qualify, so apply today to find out if you do while seats are still available. Go online to netsuite.com/Nashville. That's netsuite.com/Nashville. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-106.3 The Game. I got some tickets to give away. A 4-pack of tickets to see Monster Jam coming up at Nissan Stadium. Be caller 5-615-737-1025. Appreciate Gentry Estes from the Tennessean for being with us in the last segment. Paul Kuharski with us from paulkuharski.com. He'll be with me tomorrow on the show as well, so looking forward to that. PK, Trevor Lawrence, a big contract late last week. $275 million on a 5-year deal. 142 fully guaranteed, close to $200 million in total guarantees. And if you care about the annual average value, $55 million per year. So pretty similar to the Joe Burrow contract. Lots of reaction to the Trevor Lawrence deal. Some people stunned that he got paid that much money based on his achievement level to this point. And then others look at it and say, well, that's the quarterback market, and that's what the market dictates quarterback is paid if you're going to sign them to a new deal at this point. How do you view the Trevor Lawrence contract and where the quarterback market in the National Football League currently stands?
Yeah, I tend to be in Camp B. I mean, he's not a passer who's made a lot of explosive plays downfield, slightly above average. He limits sacks, 5.1% sack rate, 7th lowest per CBS. 2 seasons of good coaching. During his 2 seasons of good coaching, 46 touchdowns, which you love, 22 picks, which is too many.
Yep.
But here are the guys who've taken turns, setting Mahomes aside, all right? Here are the guys who've taken turns as the highest paid quarterback in the league lately. Watson, Murray, Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow. How many of those guys do you say should qualify as highest paid? I mean, Watson was very intriguing. Murray, no way.
Nope.
Hurts, no way. Lamar, yeah.
Burrow, yep.
Herbert, I'm big on, but he's,
From
you wouldn't say
no.
should be the highest paid. Burrow, yes. It just cycles. Lamar and Burrow already look like reasonable deals. So it doesn't take long to get there. And Lamar and Burrow have been passed by Herbert, Goff, and Lawrence.
Yep.
Right? And pretty soon, Trevor Lawrence is probably going to be passed by Love, Tua, and Dak.
Yep.
Now, are Love, Tua, and Dak going to you got to get away from this idea where you think the highest paid guy is the best guy, because Love isn't the best guy.
No.
He's promising, good. You know him better than anybody in town. Tua is another one of these guys that's on the fence. Like, he's got moments where he's terrific and he's got moments where he's not. And he stayed injury-free last year, but you still worry about him on that front. Dak is the definition of average and playoff unsuccessful, right? But what happens is you get one of these guys who you can win to a certain degree with, and you say, you and I are sitting down in our boardroom and we're saying, do we want this guy who we know, who we think can get better, who we've won to a reasonably satisfying degree with, or do we want to start from zero with the unknown? And you and I in the boardroom say, yes, we want the known. The fans out there say, we want Mahomes. Now, who has surfaced that is Mahomes since Mahomes? Nobody, right? I mean, you take Burrow, right? I'd take Burrow. I'm still very intrigued by Herbert with a new coach. But who else is, Lamar, some of these guys on this list.
But even he's got playoff questions, right?
Yep. Yeah, but some of these guys, I don't like them. But some of these guys on this list are the next best quarterbacks in the league. So this idea that fans have where they want to flush guys because they haven't won in the playoffs or whatever, you've got to ride it out with some of those guys and hope that things take off. Now, some of them I really don't like. I just don't think Dak Prescott's ever going to take you anywhere. And I would now somebody's going to want him at a price.
And he might get paid $60 million plus.
Somebody's been in quarterback hell for a long time, and they say, my God, we could go to the playoffs on a regular basis with Dak Prescott.
Yep.
We'll take him. But is that good enough for the Cowboys' alleged standard for how long they've not gone to the playoffs? I think Dallas would be better off restarting because they've topped out with him. And this Lawrence contract, they could get out in 2008 with 42.5 in dead money and 4.5 saved. Well, in 2028, 42.5 dead money is not going to be that much anymore with the rate the cap's going. In 2029, it's a 5-year, $202 million deal with 0 dead. I mean, it seems outrageous now, but just based on all this context, if you wait a year, you're going to say it's very palatable.
Well, and by the time
based on the cap going up and all of that.
Well, we talked about Levis. Like, let's say Levis works out best case scenario, and in a couple of years, it's his time to get paid. Well, he's going to make $60+ million per year, right? Like that's where quarterback is going right now. I think a couple things can be true here. I am totally with you in terms of like Jacksonville had to do this. You can't get back into quarterback purgatory, and Lawrence has not lived up to what he was drafted to be to this point, but he's shown that he can be a good player. I also think if you're a Titans fan, like you see this deal, and I'm not saying you're celebrating in the street, but like if I'm a Titans fan, I'm not shaking in my boots about Trevor Lawrence being the quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars either. Could he turn out to be a great player? Yeah. I mean, the thing that continues to blow my mind in this discussion is he is younger than Will Levis by a few months, but he's younger than Levis.
That's pretty crazy. Here's my thing. As we list these guys like who've been the highest paid guy in a while, do you still feel good about their potential to get better?
Right.
I do with Lawrence. Now, I don't know if that's unreasonable, if that's just me. I feel like Trevor Lawrence still, on a good game, you look at him and say, that guy can be pretty damn good. All right? Watson, I don't think that. Murray, I don't think that.
Yep.
Hurts, I think, has been kind of exposed, right? Lamar, pretty damn good, but still, I think, limited in some fashion, right? Herbert, I'm big on. Burrow, I have no question about.
No.
But that's 1,
Other
2,
than
3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys we're talking about. I'm only really big on 3 of them. And Lawrence is the third of the 3. Now, I shouldn't say really big. I'm really big on Burrow. I like Herbert a lot. And my next one would be Lawrence. So I feel a lot better about that than I do about Hurts, Murray, or Watson.
I would agree with that. I think the Lawrence part of this is interesting from the standpoint of it was such a disaster his first year. And I know some people don't want to hear that because it sounds like excuse making. But he has pointed out, and it's a fair point to bring up. Chip on the text line says, I'm going to text this every time you guys talk about Lawrence. There's some luck involved. Like the Titans had an epic choke job down the second half of that season that allowed them to get in. But he did play very well in the second half of that season. He did have a horrible first half in the playoff game and then came back and looked great in the second half of the playoff game, got the win. And then for the first half of last year, he was pretty good. And then the injuries started to creep in. So there's, albeit a limited body, a body of work of him playing good football in the league.
Injury avoidance is a quarterback skill.
It is.
I believe. That's a skill he needs to develop along with his other stuff. I don't know if they've surrounded him well enough. Like the Ridley for Gabe Davis is not a good trade. So his weapons are trending down in my eyes, and I think in the eyes of everybody. Defense can be pretty good there. Up front, they are, are they going to get him the ball back in a good situation? Are they going to prevent points to a good degree? I think they've got some promise there. But there's something about him I like, and he's one of those guys, and I don't like to play this game. I don't like to play this game. We played it with Corey Davis. They said if he wasn't, 6th, and he was 36th, well, he wasn't 36th.
Right.
But even at 36, Corey Davis wasn't good. But, I mean, I think if Trevor Lawrence wasn't number 1 and projected as a generational prospect, if he was drafted 15th, you'd be happy.
Yeah.
I think. Now, so all of those things are not his fault per se. It's his fault that he hasn't lived up to the billing, sure. But that doesn't mean you toss him in the garbage can.
He's been good. He's not been great.
Right.
That's what it is.
He's been good. He's not been great. You can win with him, and he still, in my eyes, can get better. Injury avoidance, 1. Peterson continuing to help develop him and develop that team. I like Peterson. I think he's in a good situation. You look at some of these other guys. Is Murray in a good situation? No.
Nope.
Watson, has created a terrible situation for himself, and his team's good despite that.
Yeah.
Hurts, things have gotten messy in Philadelphia. This is a save season or Sirianni's out.
Yep.
And they seem pretty ready. I mean, Sirianni's a puppet right now. They hired his coaches all around him. The Eagles have gone from very good to very messy in a hurry.
Is A.J. Brown ruining the locker room up there?
He's not helping it, right? There's a lot going on there. Lamar, when you sign Derrick Henry, you're not saying we're relying more on Lamar. You're saying we're relying less on Lamar. Now, less Lamar could be good for Lamar,
yeah.
but you don't know. Herbert, I think, has a chance to be on the upswing here because he's got a great coaching improvement. And Burrow, could be hurt a little bit by the loss of Callahan. He's in the last year of T. Higgins. This is a big year for the Bengals.
We'll get PK's thoughts on Trevor Lawrence's contract, more details on that, and the rest of the AFC South, how he feels about the quarterback position moving forward as well. Your thoughts as well, 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com is with us discussing all things Titans and the AFC South as well. Getting a little bit deeper into the Trevor Lawrence deal, a massive contract, 5 years, $275 million. PK, we were just looking through 2022. He had about a 6-game stretch in the middle of that season where he was playing just about as well as anybody in the league, which is where the hope lies from Jacksonville giving him this
So
deal.
you and I are back in this boardroom deciding what we're doing. And we look at this 6-game stretch. 14 touchdowns, 1 interception, 111 rating, took 12 sacks, 7.53 yards gained per pass attempt. Ran for a touchdown. He lost 3 fumbles. Now that's a problem that he has. But you look at that 6 games and you say, well, how do we give up on that guy?
Yeah.
That's him at his best. Now maybe they go look at his worst 6-game streak too. But this is a good stretch here. They went 4-2 in those games. They beat the Raiders. They lost at Kansas City. They beat Baltimore in a 28-27 game where he threw 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, rated 130. Lost to Detroit, beat the Titans, another 3 touchdowns, beat Dallas, 4 touchdowns. I mean, it's hard to look at a stretch like that, and it's not like he was bad in the final 3 games either. So that's a half season where you say, that's our guy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is, right? And even at the first part
that
of
whole
last
season
year,
is pretty good.
right? Like even the first part of last year, before the injuries started to creep in, he wasn't playing great, but what were they to begin the season? I mean, they started out 1-2, then they went on a stretch where they won 5 in a row. So they, by the time that game, they went across the pond, played Buffalo, beat Indy the following week, beat New Orleans, and they were sitting pretty in terms of making the playoffs. And then the last part of the season, it fell apart. But even, they destroyed the Titans last year at home, 34-14. I mean, they were still playing really well. And then, as we talked about earlier, the injuries started to creep in, and he just didn't play very well down the stretch. So, like, if you're Jacksonville, I don't think it's a tough decision. Like, Jacksonville making this decision to sign him to the contract, if it works out for you and he plays well, then the contract's going to look fine this time a year from now. It's somewhat of a calculated risk, but he's 24 years old, and I think he's shown enough good football, not consistently enough, and that's the next step for him, but he's shown enough good football where I think it's a solid move for Jacksonville. What's interesting about it to me is he's the first wave in the division of guys getting that next deal. Obviously, he's been here the longest. But you got Stroud, Richardson, Levis all in the same class. Levis is older than Trevor Lawrence is by a few months. This division, in terms of just the quarterback position itself, one of the more intriguing divisions, in my opinion, in the league, based on the youth of everybody involved and how different things could go based on the success or failure rate of these quarterbacks in this division.
Yeah, just for a second on the quarterback prices. Outside of Cousins, who did a lot of year to year, and teams didn't walk away from him.
Yep.
I mean, Washington ultimately let him go. But who walks away from the quarterback, the caliber of Trevor Lawrence or these other, or Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts?
It doesn't happen very often. Like, I would say this, like, Tannehill put up comparable numbers in Miami. Now, Tannehill also had injury problems he was dealing with, and by the end of that, they were willing to move on, and the injuries were a big part of it. Now, Tannehill did have some comparable numbers to Lawrence, and Miami moved on from him.
Yeah, that's a good example. And I think he's a relative outlier. And now Tannehill, the Titans moved on because he's old and slowing down.
Yeah.
So, at that stage, it's a different thing. But generally what we're saying is if you have that, you keep it. If you have something even less than Trevor Lawrence, you keep it and you pay the going rate. You pay the going rate. Now, I've made this case before, like in a Tua situation, who I think is less bankable than Lawrence. To me, and I think this is a bad thing for the league. There is no middle path with the quarterback. It's all or nothing, price wise.
Yep.
And it's dictated by the franchise tag, right? So a guy is getting at least the franchise tag and the franchise tag plus 20%, I think it is, the second year, right? So it starts with that, and those are huge numbers.
Yep.
So he's getting 2 years at those two numbers minimally, and usually 3 years. So extrapolating out that third year, that's the minimal thing he's getting. There's no middle ground. There's no like middle quarterback where you say, well, I like him, but I don't love him, and here's what we'll offer you. And he'll say, well, no, I'll go. If you let me go to the market, somebody needs a quarterback like me because they're in dire trouble at quarterback. So there's no middle range for a quarterback that has any level of success.
Corey Curtis brought up Derek Carr in Vegas
That's a good one.
as a good one. Now, the difference there would be Carr was there for 9 seasons.
And had multiple regime changes.
And had multiple regime changes. Did have some injury issues that he dealt with, but 9 seasons. Now, his numbers throughout that were good. Not great, but good. But Lawrence has been there 3 years, so it's different just from a timeline standpoint.
Carr got a second contract and maybe a third contract. But that's a very good example. But again, an outlier, right?
Yeah.
So we've got Carr and Tannehill.
Well, and then the question of the division part of this. I mean, everybody thinks they know about Stroud, and I feel good about Stroud, but I don't know yet, right? I need to see it another year. Levis, Richardson, have no idea. Like I have no idea if Levis or Richardson are going to hit. But if they do, I mean, this has a chance to be a division where this time 10 years from now we could still be talking about the same quarterbacks. That doesn't happen very often in the NFL. Is the likelihood that it's going to happen here? Probably not. But that's part of what makes it so intriguing to me is this is such a young division at the quarterback position, and it could go a lot of different ways. But if it does work out for all these teams, it's going to be a fun division for a long time.
Yeah, probably at least one of them doesn't pan out.
That would be my guess.
Now, I think people automatically presume Stroud will. It's possible, though, that a guy takes off like a rocket ship and fades. I think unlikely based on what he showed in the first year. But, we've seen some guys, Kyler Murray, is an example, look pretty damn good and then not. Jalen Hurts, I think, has been figured out to a degree.
Yep.
So, you don't know exactly what will happen there. But I'd say the odds on him are low. So it's Levis or Richardson because Lawrence has achieved a degree of success already.
Got a texter that says, would you rather pay Trevor Lawrence or Jordan Love? How do you view that one? Lawrence has done it longer. I think Love's 6 to 7 game stretch to close out last year was at a higher level than anything we've seen from Lawrence. It's just a very limited sample size.
Yeah, I haven't seen as much Love as you've seen, being a Packers fan and watching them weekly. I would lean Lawrence, but, with that caveat and, check back in a year.
I think it's really close. And Tua's an interesting one too. Like Tua, there's been a lot of good performances from him. He's not come through in the playoffs when they need him the most, and I don't think he's an elite player. But if it's not going to be Tua, who's Miami turning to? Their quarterback.
And they're so stacked with weaponry. In a way, all you need is a facilitator. Sounds kind of crazy that you could be that good.
Yeah.
But with their skill position guys, don't mess it. Be efficient. Get the ball in their hands, and watch them run. And he can do that. But does it make him a guy worth $200 million? In that situation, I wonder. if you could say, well, we could find another guy who could do that at rookie prices that enables us to continue to pay all of these weapons. That'll be a great test case for me.
Yep.
But I suspect that he gets his money. Now on the Lawrence versus Love question, part of that to me would be, who do you like better offensively, Peterson or LaFleur?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big part of it. And I think.
And who do you like better offensively?
It's pretty close.
Yeah, I think it is too.
I would probably lean Peterson. That's just me, but it's pretty close. I just think there's a sticker shock going on at quarterback right now that people are having a tough time getting over, without realizing the cap is going to be astronomical as it continues to grow here. And in 2 years, $55 million for a quarterback is really not going to be breaking the bank. It just seems like that is the case now, based on the numbers that we've known. I remember it wasn't that long ago when Matthew Stafford got $40 million a year, and people were like, "Oh my God, they're paying a quarterback $40 million per year."
I remember when $20 million a year was a ridiculous benchmark.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just all of it's gonna grow.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
unless you're a running back,
one of the big benchmarks. But I mean, the cap, the TV contracts, just all of it. There's no end in sight, really. I saw some number on the contract for 5 Christmas Day games.
Yeah, it's absurd.
It's just outrageous.
615-737-1025. One more segment with Paul Kuharsky coming up next. Take more of your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Final segment of the day, Robby and Rexrode. Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com with us both today and tomorrow here on the program.
And happy to be here. This from Aaron Schatz. Used to be with Football Outsiders. And now I believe just kind of everywhere. In week 2 of 1995, the Oilers had 11 straight goal-to-go plays against the Steelers. Incomplete, 3-yard scramble, defensive holding for a new first, 1-yard run, offsides, replay second down, 0-yard run, defensive pass interference for a new first down, 0-yard sneak, 0-yard run, 1-yard bootleg touchdown. How fun would that have been?
A lot of effort, baby. Get it in there.
Red zone, baby.
The red zone. Got to be good.
Red zone goal line. No Derrick Henry in that game. No Earl Campbell either. They were between.
Yes.
No Eddie George yet.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. How about this from Trevor on the text line? If Levis does really well this season and the Titans can identify that he is the guy, would it be financially beneficial for them to try to get a deal done with him earlier rather than later to save a little bit of money?
Can't do it. Well, yeah, you can, right? 3 years?
I think 3 years, yeah. I think.
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it after 3 years. Yeah, I mean, conceivably, you wait until after 4 and he's, a free agent. So,
but that's the Titans would love to have that problem, right? Like if Levis is going to cost you $60+ million, that means he's pretty good. So yes. The Titans will be more than happy to pay that when the time comes if he's good.
Yeah, and with your franchise quarterback, even if you waited until after 4, no, this is just going to be his second year. They cannot re-sign
Not after
him
this year.
After this year. So you would love to be in position after his 3rd year to be signing him long-term, where that 4th year would still be largely inexpensive for a starting quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. But again, like if you're the Titans and the time comes where you're feeling really good about handing him a big contract, you'd sign up for that right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want that to happen.
Yeah, and then you manage the roster and the cap and everything else after that. But, having one of these relatively high-picked quarterbacks make it to a second deal would be great. Titans are due for that.
Yeah, look, everybody talks about how great it is to have a quarterback on a rookie deal.
Right.
Which is great. But would you rather have that or would you rather have Mahomes?
Exactly.
Or Burrow?
Yeah.
You'd rather have Mahomes or Burrow, and then you work the contract stuff the way you work the contract stuff.
Exactly.
Who are the teams that are winning Super Bowls with quarterbacks on rookie deals?
Seattle did it with Russell Wilson, but it's hard to come by. It's hard to do that.
That's already a long time ago.
Exactly. And, Houston's trying. Clearly, they're loading up with Stroud this year. But to your point, Mahomes, I think, did win one before he got the big deal at the end of it. But he's winning them left and right now.
Generally speaking, your path to a Super Bowl win is going to be with a quarterback who's on his second contract.
Stafford is
and
getting
that
a lot of money.
second contract is going to be a good chunk of your salary.
Yeah, so you'd sign up for that right now if you're the Titans. Like the Levis part of this, one thing that is intriguing, like if he is good this year, to your point, you can't sign him to another deal after this. But I think you would be even more all in next offseason of, well, before you do get to that deal and you're paying him that next money, continue to load the roster up and go forward around it, which that would be what you want. Like if you felt good about that after this season, regardless of if you made the playoffs or not, to me that's a good year for the Titans.
Yeah, and you could plan your cap then.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, in 2025 and a go for it thing. And planning ahead in 2026, all right, we know what his likely cap number would be in the first year of an extension. And then knowing the first year of the stadium, 2027, would be the first really big hit of him and what it would take from there.
Yeah, that's to me, if that's what the conclusion you come to at the end of the year, that you feel great about him moving forward, that's a successful season. Like that, to me, that's so much what this season is about, is just purely him, regardless of the win total and the playoffs and all that.
If you could get a positive verdict on him, then the record, the playoffs, all of that stuff matters a lot less. But if you're getting a positive verdict on him, chances are the record's pretty good.
Yep.
A lot of it depends on what other people are doing.
It does. And, injury luck and all those things too. But that if he plays well enough this season where you're feeling good about him long term, then you should be in contention for a playoff spot. Like I think they've done enough with their roster. And we saw it last year with Houston, right? Like it doesn't take long in this league to go from bad to good. Now, it's hard to get to elite, but to turn things around in this league these days, especially with the work they did in the offseason, it doesn't take that long.
Also, since they've expanded the playoffs, it's been proven that 6 was the right number.
6 was the right number.
Because that 7th team is not very good.
No.
There's a difference. From 6 to 7, there is a gap.
Yep.
And it's a mistake. The expansion was now they don't care. The money, the extra game, all of that stuff, they're perfectly happy with it. The one team bye and all of that.
And there's eventually going to be a 7 that makes some noise and goes on a little bit of a run in the playoffs. But to your point, it has not happened.
We've seen no hint of it so far. And so if Levis is good and the Titans have a good season, I know some people are thinking they go out and win the division.
Right.
I would think, a best case scenario for this team might be contending for a wild card, and that would probably be that seventh spot.
Yep.
And you get in and you see what happens.
PK?
There will be people who will say, no, don't get the 7th spot, get a better draft pick.
Why don't we watch sports?
Yes.
Play the game. Play the game, enjoy the games.
I look forward to rejoining you tomorrow. I urge people in the meantime, don't block the box and be sure to lock your locks.
PK will be back tomorrow on the program. That does it for us today. Chase and Big Joe coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3, The Game.